How can ordinary people change an unjust social, political, or economic system? In a democracy like the United States, voting is one of the most effective avenues to bring about change. Elections are definitely important, and voting matters. But what happens when elected leaders don't uphold or respect democratic norms? What happens when the institutions of democracy are manipulated to block political opposition and deprive civic freedoms? Most Americans care deeply about our democracy and the ideals of freedom and justice for all. Many may wonder what to do in this moment when we are being pushed to fear our neighbors and to mistrust the outcome of elections by some leaders who continue to chip away at our political system to maintain power. One way to confront the threats to our democracy is to explore and engage with the pillars of support. Pillars of support are the institutions and groups that sustain and legitimize a political system. These can include the military or police, bureaucrats, media outlets, religious organizations, educational institutions, civic groups, the business sector, and others. These institutions, or pillars, can uphold undemocratic political systems by providing different kinds of support. For example, businesses may fund or advertise in support of a particular candidate or policy platform that marginalizes groups based on identity. Faith leaders may offer moral support to certain leaders while socializing anti-democratic ideas and fearful rhetoric to demonize political opponents. Civic associations, such as unions, lobbying groups, and volunteer associations, may mobilize members to support an undemocratic candidate or policy. Without these pillars of support, an unjust, undemocratic political system weakens or collapses. Knowing when and how to target these pillars as part of a pro-democracy movement requires skill and strategy. During the U.S. Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s, Dr. King and fellow movement leaders observed that pressuring political leaders directly was often unsuccessful because they were too insulated from their influence to be moved. Instead, movement leaders made a strategic choice to target the organizations that played a key role in maintaining segregation and relied upon the support and patronage of the Black community, like local businesses such as restaurants and bus transportation. Targeting these institutions that supported segregation and that were more vulnerable to pressure could in turn create pressure on the insulated political leaders. Each pillar, whether it's business, faith communities, veterans associations, or civic groups, is never monolithic. These pillars are made up of individuals with different identities, interests, and loyalties, all of which are fluid and can change when incentives change. When we work together with a cross-section of society across race, ethnicity, class, religion, profession, and ideology, we all benefit from our many connections and entry points to engage with individuals within these different pillars as a part of a broad, pro-democracy movement. One important step in using the pillars of support framework is to analyze which pillars may have the most influence within a given context, in your town, city, state, or national political system. It helps to identify where there are potential allies within each pillar and who within the pillar may wield more power to shift support away from anti-democratic behavior and practice and towards behavior aligned with our shared democratic views. To weaken support within the pillars, businesses can refuse to provide campaign funds to anti-democratic leaders, or the media may expose their corruption and abuses, or workers may go on strike and disrupt the economy, or religious leaders can denounce anti-democratic policies and call for justice. Fostering relationships with individuals within these pillars is important to build allyship and understand where there is the most leverage for influence and pressure. But another important tactic is to use external pressure campaigns to shift loyalties and convince those within a pillar to change. There are thousands of creative pressure tactics that have been used throughout our history or in other countries facing similar democratic decline. Employees may protest if their company provides campaign funding for a politician who has publicly denied the peaceful transition of power. Consumers may boycott or workers may go on strike. Religious leaders may call out those within their denomination for dehumanizing rhetoric or condoning political violence. Veterans may quietly influence their colleagues in the security sector to uphold their commitment to the Constitution in the case that they are called upon to squash peaceful protests or support anti-government or white nationalist militias. Civic groups may mobilize their large constituencies to campaign for civic freedoms, such as calling out policies that restrict voting and civil rights. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to the challenge of democratic backsliding, By understanding and engaging influential actors within each pillar, democracy movements can be more strategic in building relationships and better go on offense together.